All right, new CNN polling this morning shows that Americans are turning on President Trump on this signature issue, cracking down on illegal immigration. Just over half say the president has gone too far, and most do not believe the federal government is being careful in following the law while carrying out deportations. Still, it is an issue where his numbers remain stronger than his overall approval. Let's get right to CNN's political director, my friend David Chalian. Talk to us about these numbers.
John.
Better than other issues, but still in a different place than he was a month ago.
Exactly. I mean, I still think this is a strong suit, but the manner in which he's going about some of the immigration and deportation policy enactment here is clearly raising questions for the American public. Because as you noted, it's above his overall job approval rating, but he's gone from majority support on this issue, majority approval just in March, John, now down to 45%. And for the first time we've seen in a while, underwater on this issue, which is a concern, but look where the economy is down there. Look where inflation, tariffs on issues. You can imagine why in Michigan last night, when celebrating his first 100 days, he was leaning into immigration as the thing that sort of brought him to the dance and the thing that animates his base of support so very much.
Yeah, the best option sort of he has to talk about right now. This case of Kilmore Abrego Garcia, which Terry Moran was pressing the president on last night, where do Americans fall on that issue?
This is a prime example of what I'm saying about sort of the how the Trump administration has been proceeding here is raising questions. 56% in our new poll say that the administration should bring Abrego Garcia back. Only 20% of Americans in our poll, John, say should not bring him back, and about a quarter are unsure about what to do in this case. I will note that 56%, that includes 28% of Republicans, John. 28% of Republicans think that Abrego Garcia should be brought back. More Republicans, of course, say he should not be, but Democrats and independents overwhelmingly say he should be brought back. I just think this issue is not cutting quite the way that the administration had hoped it would be cutting.
Yeah, no, that number kind of jumps out of the screen. It might not be what people, certainly the White House, expected on this. David Chalian, great to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
There is new CNN polling out this morning taking the temperature of Americans on one of the president's signature issues. A rising share of Americans thinking that President Trump has gone too far in cracking down on illegal immigration, the issue he highlighted to ABC in a new interview as one of his biggest accomplishments so far.
What's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done so far in these 100 days?
Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant because our country was really going bad. They were allowing people to come in from prisons, as you know, and you've heard me say it, but you've heard a lot of people say it. Prisons, mental institutions, gang members, murderers.
Joining me now are CNN political commentators Kate Bedingfield and Shermichael Singleton to talk more about this. Kate, so jumping off of this, on this new numbers on immigration, a rising share of Americans say that President Trump's deportation policies have gone too far. A similar number, 52%, say his immigration policies have not made America safer. And most, 57%, say they do not believe the federal government's being careful in following the law while deporting people. Yet, his numbers on immigration are stronger than his approval rating overall or on the economy. That tells you what?
Well, I think it tells you that the Trump team, even as confident as they feel about where they are on the border, needs to be really thoughtful about how they proceed here. Most people are not following the ins and outs of everything that the White House, any White House, even this White House, which is very good at drawing attention to itself, most regular people are not following the ins and outs of what they're doing every single day from a policy perspective. And so what people hear are stories about children with metastatic cancer who've been deported along with their parents. And these kinds of stories make people feel, they remind people, I think, of the first Trump term, when family separation and some of the most draconian immigration policies they tried to put in place were definitional. That's how people absorbed what Trump was trying to do on the border, and they didn't like it. So I think that the Trump administration here has their recklessness, their unwillingness to abide by the law, which, by the way, you know, Republicans like to talk about 20 issues and being on the right side of 80-20 issues. Well, one big 80-20 issue in this country is the question of whether the president should follow the law and should adhere to court orders when they're handed down, even if he disagrees with them. And so Trump has very much been on the wrong side of that as he's been dealing with immigration at the border. And I think that's part of why we're seeing these numbers where they are.
And on that point, Shermichael, the president now admits that he can bring back that Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador if he wants to. He said this in this new ABC News interview. Let me play this.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has
he's
ordered
not.
you.
But for the last month, we have heard the exact opposite from those in the administration. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, saying this month, that's up to El Salvador. If they want to return him, that's not up to us. Stephen Miller, it's arrogant to suggest that tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. That is the president of El Salvador. Your question about the court can only be to him. Caroline Levitt. El Salvador does not intend to smuggle a designated well, she says that. He is an El Salvadorian national. That is his home. That is where he belongs. The president now makes clear they were lying. They were not telling the truth when they said that. If the president now says this, does that matter anymore?
Look, the legal posturing of the administration has really been around this, I guess, convoluted term from the Supreme Court about facilitate. And what does that mean? They're still challenging that. It's still working its way through the court system. I think this is obviously going to go back to SCOTUS. They'll make the final determination if they believe the executive branch does have unilateral authority here to just remove someone. In this particular case, I think in many ways there's a strong argument for the executive branch to make it. I'm not saying this just because it's President Trump. I would also have this same posture if it was a Democrat, generally speaking.
I'm just saying, no matter what the policy is, say what you mean and mean what you say. When you're the Attorney General of the United States and you say, we can't do this, and Donald Trump says, of course I can. Like, this is a problem.
Well, I'm looking at it through two different frames, though, Kate. I'm seeing the political argument here. Again, it's still the strongest issue for the president, but I'm also looking at it through the legal lens.
Yep.
And again, legally, I think the attorneys representing the executive branch are going to want to stick firm with their overall argument about the powers of the executive as it pertains to immigration, because it is an argument about national sovereignty and national security. And I think those two things have to be assessed in their disparate categories.
When I think about the population that moved to Trump, you had the migrant crisis reach many cities, right? And cross over into an environment where people weren't used to having the conversation. And so this is very different from Trump 1, where it's like build a wall. Like, if we can put up that list again of things people are wary of, it's like a range of policies that might feel unexpected to people. Am I reading that wrong? Like IRS data and, snatching people up off the street, right? Revoking student visas, wartime authority for deportations. This is not a wall.
Yeah, look, with Donald Trump, we talk about what and how, as David kind of pointed out. They tend to agree with him on immigration. People should be deported who committed crimes. It's always the how and the execution that gets him into trouble. Even on issues like tariffs, they've gone too far, even though there might be some support for some of these policies. And we see it over and over again, and I think that is always their problem. They overshoot, they overreach, and that's what turns off so much of the public, and that's why the numbers are bad.
Yeah, you said people need to look under the hood of these numbers.
Yeah, so for instance, take the number there on deportations to Salvadorian prisons. You have about half, I think it's 51% in this poll, said that they're opposed to that. But then you take a look at the underlying numbers, and there's also a really high percentage of unsure, which in this day and age I think is a little bit unusual. Anytime I see an unsure number on a question about a news story that's gotten an enormous amount of coverage, that gives me pause. And it makes me think that there are a lot of voters who, again, are sort of spiritually with Trump on the idea that we need to be tougher on immigration, but want to see how this plays out. And take, for instance, the Abrego Garcia case. Started off as one where people said, this is a Maryland father, how could we do this? And then I think in conservative media, you began to see more and more reporting on the details of, but there was a domestic violence allegation, et cetera. And suddenly it becomes a much muddier story, at least for Trump supporters.